Your website faces two very different types of threats. Sometimes a hacker tries to sneak a malicious piece of code through your front door. Other times, a million bots try to rush the door all at once just to crash your server. Today, we're learning how to stop both using AWS WAF and AWS Shield. Let's define the difference. AWS Shield is your defense against distributed denial of service, or DDoS attacks. Think of Shield as the giant bouncer standing outside a nightclub. It does not inspect every individual person in detail. Instead, it watches the size and behavior of the crowd. If 10,000 suspicious visitors suddenly rush the entrance at the same time, Shield recognizes that flood as abnormal traffic and blocks it before your infrastructure gets overwhelmed. That is the key idea behind Shield. It focuses on traffic volume. Too much traffic, too many requests, too much pressure hitting your network all at once. AWS WAF stands for Web Application Firewall. WAF works differently. Instead of standing out by the street, it stands directly at the entrance checking IDs. WAF inspects the contents of each request very carefully. It examines things like HTTP headers, cookies, query strings, and URLs. This is how WAF stops attacks like SQL injection and cross-site scripting, also called XSS. These attacks often look like normal web requests on the surface, but they contain malicious payloads hidden inside the request itself. So remember the contrast. Shield asks, how much traffic is arriving? WAF asks, what is inside this request? Now let's talk about why you use these services and what they cost. You are actually already using AWS Shield Standard right now, even if you never configured it yourself. Shield Standard is automatically enabled for every AWS customer at no additional cost. AWS quietly protects your infrastructure from common DDoS attacks in the background. There's also AWS Shield Advanced. That version costs about $3,000 per month. With Shield Advanced, you get stronger protections, access to the AWS DDoS response team 24 hours a day, and financial protection against massive scaling costs during an attack. AWS WAF is different because it's built around custom rules. For example, you can create a rule that blocks traffic from a specific IP address. You can create a rate limit rule that allows only 100 requests per minute from a user. You can block known bot traffic. You can block requests that contain SQL injection patterns. WAF gives you fine-grained control over what is allowed to reach your application. Here's the exam tip you absolutely want to remember. If the question mentions SQL injection, cross-site scripting, also called XSS, bot filtering, rate limiting, or IP blocking, the answer is usually AWS WAF. If the question mentions DDoS attacks or traffic floods overwhelming servers, the answer is AWS Shield. Now let's see how these services work together in a real AWS architecture. A user sends a request from the internet. That request first reaches CloudFront at the edge of the AWS network. AWS Shield sits there automatically protecting your environment from massive volumetric attacks. If a flood of malicious traffic appears, Shield absorbs it and blocks it before it can hit your servers. Once the traffic passes that first layer, the request moves to AWS WAF. WAF then inspects the request contents against your security rules. It checks whether the request contains malicious scripts, suspicious patterns, or behavior that violates your policies. If the request passes inspection, the clean traffic finally reaches your application load balancer and EC2 instances. That layered approach is the important takeaway. Shield stops floods. WAF inspects requests. You usually use both together. You have now blocked the major external attacks targeting your application. But what happens if an attacker steals an employee password and logs directly into your AWS account? In the next video, you'll learn how Amazon GuardDuty uses machine learning to detect suspicious activity and internal threats inside your AWS environment.